Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our agroecology workshop series 2 on closing the loop. I am Jane Cherry from the Cooperative and Policy Alternative Centre. We are an active partner of the South African Food Sovereignty Campaign, and together COPAC and SAFC are bringing you this workshop series in an attempt to deepen and strengthen food sovereignty pathways in South Africa. The first series, which looked at how to set up your household garden, is all now uploaded on YouTube. Courtney will share the link of the recordings in the chat for those who missed it. And before we begin, I'm just going to start with a brief introduction to the series, to the programming, and then also some housekeeping. And after that, I will hand over to John. So this series is broken up into 4 themes. Today, we are going to look at setting up a food forest and some principles about land management. Next week, on the 4th of November, we will learn about water management in your garden. We will then take a week's break, and the following week, the 18th of November, we will learn about waste management and composting. And then we will end the series with the workshop on seed saving, indigenous knowledge, and seed banking on the 25th of November. All of these workshops take place on Wednesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. And they include theory and sometimes some practical by John, followed by a brief input by another expert in the relevant field. Today, John will share with us first, followed by Courtney Morgan from COPAC. Courtney will share with us a unique land justice activist tool, and this is about looking beyond our own food gardens and needs to the land needs of our community and other living things that are sharing the land with us. Our hope is that by the end of this series, the end of these 4 weeks, you will have enough information and guidance to reduce inputs in your food garden, in your homes, by recycling and reusing what you have, that you will increase the biodiversity, and of course that you'll increase the yield of nutritious food for you, your family, and your community. And then to share this knowledge, we hope that you will share this knowledge about closing the loop with others in your community. Just some housekeeping, which we had on display earlier. Please use the chat if you have any questions. We will try to answer them at the end. We are recording all of these seminars, and they will be uploaded to YouTube. They all are available on the SAFC Facebook page at SA Food Sovereignty. And we've set up an agroecology advice panel. So if you ever have any questions along your journey, please send us a message, DM us on Twitter or Facebook. You can email me and we will pass on the contacts of those experts. And then finally, just a reminder, we are still doing this during the COVID pandemic, so please ensure that you follow hygiene practices in your garden or on your farm. Right, I'm now going to hand over to John, our expert permaculturalist, who is very generous with his time and his insights. So thank you so much, John. We have pre-recorded this to ensure that there are no connection issues. So I'm just going to share my screen and play John's input.
Good afternoon. Today we are going to talk about the creating food forest. And the creating food forest is a very important topic because of the crisis that we are having, both the environmental crisis, the social crisis, and within the social crisis we have challenge of food and also injustice, what is happening in the world, the politics. And the question is, we find that in Africa or in the world, we are cutting down trees, we have lots of pollution, we have erosion taking place, we have challenges of getting good water. Hence, this is linked to the food that we eat every day, or linked to the food security and the nutritional security. And when we say it's linked to food security and nutritional security, it means most families in the SADC region or in Sub-Sahara are failing, especially in the rural areas, or especially in small-scale farmers, where we have minimum or erratic rainfall. They are not access to the irrigation systems, and they wait for the rains. and the rains are not coming as before because of the pollution that we are doing in the environment and because of the injustice that is happening within the political arena, within the political environment. So that's why you find most communities, they can even disintegrate, or people, they, as a family, they separate in the sense that the family is not able to get food. There is no water. There is no peace in that family, in that environment. And you find people, they tend to even neglect their homesteads in a way that you find deserts around the homesteads. And these deserts are created because people are fed up and they are no longer have faith in the way things are managed. And looking at that, we have on the other hand commercial farmers who have access to resources, to water, access to subsidies, access to loans and finances. They are polluting the environment. They are pushing the forest away. And we have now a crisis of not getting water and other stuff that are required for people to grow their own food. So how can now we change this? If we do put forest, what will happen? This is what we are going to discuss today, that all these things that are happening, the challenges that are happening, if people change or the system and look at a new system of creating forests around their homesteads, creating forests within their farms, creating a system that bring the lung of the environment wherever they are. And this lung of the environment will address these issues that I have mentioned, the crisis, environmental crisis, the social crisis, food shortage, the nutrition challenges, and injustice. We have the conflict because of the unstable environment that we have. So if we create the environment at peace, then most of things will be at place. Most of things will be available. For example, food within the food forest, within planting trees that provide us with food. There is medicine, there is food, there is abundance that you get in a small piece of land. We can also get shelter for birds, insects, and others. And within that, that helps the management of pests, management of number of things in the system. Within that, we also help to cool the surrounding. The temperatures around us, they can be cooled. See, now we have a heat wave, we have the climate change. All these things are not caused by outsiders. It is us who are causing these challenges. But how can we solve this? Through creating food forests within our homesteads. And this food forest can also provide biomass for essential microorganisms. Because for every plant to grow, for any crop to grow, it needs essential microorganisms. These microorganisms, they help to activate the nutrients and minerals in the soil, and hence they can create healthy soil. Once the healthy soil is there, then several or diverse plants can grow, plants that can provide us with food. Even mushrooms can grow, even insects can start to come out because eatable insects, because the environment has been created in a good way, in a healthy way. So once we create healthy environment within wherever we are, we create good system for ourselves and for abundance food for people, abundance food for the environment, abundant food for other related insects that live in the environment. So within trees, wherever you have a tree or wherever you have different kind of trees, there is peace because trees themselves, they provide the healing power of to people. People, they are healed not even from consuming, but only from sitting underneath a tree or sleeping in a forest or meditating in a forest. That can help you to release stress, to heal cancer, to heal number of ailments. If you create a forest, it becomes a pharmacy of your own pharmacy within your home state. And creating this forest, it's not only that you aim, as I'm trying to explain here, that not only that you aim for a fruit, but a tree itself, having the structure of a tree itself in your or in the system. A tree connected to other tree provide peace and spiritual well-being of people. So we need to consider and respect that. We can look at that these trees, they can sequestrate carbon. There is carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide that is released. This can it can go in the atmosphere, or it's released in the atmosphere. The only way to sequestrate this, to take it back and bang it into the soil, is through trees, through plants. These plants we are talking about, they are plants of multi-purpose. And this is important, that these plants are of multi-purpose. They can help us to deal with a number of things that are a challenge, that are a crisis in our environment or within the social environment. They are tools for water cycle. Water cycle is a very important thing if you understand it. You will never see, if you understand it and you know it, you will never see and like to see water run on the surface to the ocean. Once it goes to the ocean, it will never come back to us. So it is important that the understanding of water cycle and the application of strategies and techniques to create effective water cycle will help everyone and every member of the community and the environment. And the environment will live at peace with you and with the and able to produce more food for your family. So to deal with this, the step one is to understand some of the technologies or terminologies that we use. We use the word permaculture in most times, but permaculture is about designing. So the designing component of permaculture is to try to understand, you have to understand the crisis, and try to bring different components to create diversity and stability, and create a system that is resilient, and create a system that is of a self-reliant, that is connected to nature. And the design component of permaculture tools is the one that we encourage ourselves to use when we are designing food foresting. But we do not need to forget the agroecology systems, where it is a principle, it's a reminder to take the agricultural and the ecological systems and ecological way of supporting the food system wherever we are. The agroecological is a way of copying nature, bringing nature home, and it has lots of practices or techniques that helps us to make the food forest sustainable. For example, making compost or biofertilizer. It is an agroecological approach. It is an agroecological tool. But how you apply this in the system and support the system, it will eventually lead to a regenerative system, which helps us the growth and continue of maintenance of the forest. And once the forest becomes a regenerative system, supporting itself, controlling pests on itself, generate or propagate its own seedlings, able to take care of other young plants and create a good succession in the environment, then it is a regenerative way. Once we have that regenerative way, the system, it is able to repair its own challenges, like erosion, like runoff of water. It won't happen because the system itself will support itself and will create a system that deal with challenges that we are faced with. So these terminologies, we need to know them and probably need to actually apply them appropriately in a appropriate environment or related environment to where they are applicable. But as we go through, we need to understand about this food forestry, how we go about. We need to look at classifying of plants. For example, any plant that is lower than 5 meters is called a shrub. Let's take a fruit tree like tree tomato. It's a shrub. A tree like the pomegranate, it's a shrub. But a mango, which goes more than 5 meters, is called a tree. And this is important when we are starting to design using the permaculture approach. So you need also to look to know the tropical and subtropical trees. Which trees are subtropical? Which trees are Mediterranean? Which trees grows in the cold environment? Which trees grows in the warmer environment? Like in Gauteng, you cannot grow mango and bananas. If you grow mango and banana, you need to create a microclimate. But in Limpopo, in Zanini, you can grow a wide variety of tropical and subtropical trees. If you are in Cape Town and it's part of Johannesburg in Gauteng, you can grow the palm fruit and the stone fruit. And these are plants that can grow in the cooler environment. Even the olive trees can grow in this environment. They need the cool environment for them to survive, including the pecan nuts, including the grapes, including the walnuts. They are great in the warm cooler environment. Need to consider when you are doing designing, consider the windbreaks, buffer zones, and live fence. These live fence are a system of controlling and protecting wind and fire and protecting catastrophes that can come outside towards the food forest. So species like nam nam, species like uh, cactus or pickle pears can be planted on the boundaries as a windbreaker or as a fire breakers to help in the maintenance of the food forest. And eventually these plants, they also provide food, very high in nutrients. Microclimate and yield can be formed by the relationship, understanding the species that can grow together. Because if you take a big tree like mango tree, Manganiferia indica, you and grow it with the tree tomato. A tree tomato will only survive for a few years. After 5 years, a tree tomato will not able to grow well because of a mango will overtake and shadow the tree tomato. Deciduous and evergreen are important to know. A deciduous is that plant that loses leaves in winter. So if it loses in winter, in winter, it is able to allow sunlight to penetrate through it to hit the whole body. And in summer, it created the leaves. So it is a plant that you consider to plant where if you are planting closer to the house, it can be planted on the northern side of the house. But you cannot plant a mango tree to the northern side of the house, or avocado, or macadamia nuts, because it's an evergreen tree. It will shed, it will give you very cold environment in winter. But the deciduous can allow sunlight to penetrate through, and you can have semi-shade and good sunlight, good heat that comes through it. So it's about designing and knowing where you can put the plants. Polyculture is a system of having different species together, species that are connected together, that are productive in nature, but they are able to control themselves from pests, from other elements that are not required in the system. And together in that, you can integrate with agroforestry system, which brings the integration of crops in the food forest. As the food forest, as you establish the food forest, it will have gaps in between that are not shaded. So you can grow crops, maize, nuts, a number of the crops that you require. And those are the annuals, whilst you are waiting for the perennials to take over. And in the permaculture approach, we call it a succession design system. So you need to look at indigenous species that are good in the design in the system. Indigenous includes the species that are native to Africa or native to a country, and exotics are species that are from outside. So as you create your food forest, you need to know which species are not indigenous. And if they are exotic, some of them, they can be exotic, but they are naturalized and they are good plants in the country. For example, a mango is called Mangiferia indica. Originally, it comes from India. So it is indigenous in India, but here in Africa, it came in the early 1940s. And when it came in, it became a source of food and it grows well. It's not invasive. It's naturalized to Africa. Some can call it indigenous itself because it is a plant that is good for Africans and for people in the world. But species that are exotic, for example, a guava is exotic and tropical. And we need to know when we are talking about this exotic, the Ministry of Agriculture is a booklet that indicates which species are invasive, exotic, and invasive. Those species are not allowed to grow them in the system. Like a guava, it's classified as invasive, but it can be grown through license or you can grow through a controlled environment area. So you can bring it into the system, it grows fast, but remember, we don't need to break the rules or the agreements or the bylaws of a certain on how we grow food. So we need to grow species. We have a wide variety of species that we can grow, indigenous and exotic, like olive trees. Olive trees are everywhere. They can grow anywhere. You find them in Israel, you find them in Canada, you find them everywhere. They can grow, they are adaptable in any environment. So it is important to know which species are easily adaptable to any environment and integrate them in the system of food forest. So as we work on this, you work on the selection, make a long list as you start to plan your food forest. Make a long list of the fruits you require. Compare them with what the nutritional value do they have. If you see there is these plants are not providing certain nutrients that you require, go research and find out which plant can provide a specific nutrient. Like here in my garden, you can find a wide variety of plants because these plants, they provide me with the wide variety of nutrients. And look at cultivars. For example, the avocados and mango, they have wide variety of cultivars. Consider that into the system so that it provides you with the way and how you can harvest them and when you can harvest them, because they can indicate that you can have these fruits like avocado throughout the year because they bear fruits in a different times. Also mango, they bear in different times. So you create or design your system in a way it has to continuously provide the food you require all the time. Temperatures, you need to consider them, climate in the area, soil type, depth and texture, you need to consider that. Most fruit trees, they like well-drained soil. If water is stagnating in a soil where a tree is, the roots will rot. And when the roots rot, the plant dies. For example, uh, the pawpaw, when you have pawpaw trees, usually pawpaw trees, they need a well-drained environment. And by having a well-drained environment, then you can have a a good production out of them. So you maximize a situation to produce something, but it's through understanding how you are doing the designing. Rainfall, need to know how much rainfall are you receiving, because some plants they need enough water. Where do you get the water? So you now design on how to harvest water and store, or you need to source water, enough water to grow your crops. So some techniques that we will talk later are important to do that, so that water is available. Design now for the fruit orchard or the forest, food forest. Which zone can you plant these species? Can you create, if you have a piece of land, can you have them, the food forest, in zone 1 to zone 3 or to zone 5? Yes, it's possible. If you are talking of shrubs, shrubs can be part of zone 1. You can create a boundary between zone 1 and zone 2 by having a screen of tree tomatoes or pomegranates and or berries. And when we have this, it's a boundary of zone 1 and zone 2. And when you are in zone 2, you have trees that can grow a little bit taller or they are a little bit bigger, like apples. Then you can have them in zone 2, apples, peach. And then as you go on, you can have trees that can be in zone 3 or zone 4. So right at the boundary, at the end, you have indigenous fruit trees like amalulas or like the wild plums. They are indigenous fruit trees. But also closer to them, inner from zone 4 coming to zone 3 or zone 4, between zone 4 and zone 5, you have your mango trees, your avocado trees, because these are huge trees that are you are growing, and they cannot you cannot put them closer to the house. But also in zone 0 or zone 1, you can grow apple trees closer to the wall, even 50 centimeters to the wall. They can grow well. They cannot destroy your foundation. The apple trees and the pawpaw trees, they can be very closer to the house. So a system of permaculture is about understanding a plant and put it at the right place at the right time. That's designing. So if you follow the principles of permaculture, you are able to bring any plant in a farm. But when you bring this tree in a farm, what it means is that you are putting it at the right place at the right time, so that it's not going to distract or destroy or damage some of the systems that are already there. So that's designing. And sector, there are some sectors I mentioned that, for example, you might have fire sector where usually every year there is fire that comes in the northern side or eastern side. You plant fire or breaks or plants that resist fires. And these species include like cactus, as I mentioned, the fig trees, but at the same time they provide food for you. Even the aloes, they can be planted there. At the same time, they provide medicine for you, not only for you, but also for your livestock. Then you have an aspect. If aspect and a slope, it's a situation where your land, if it's facing north, it gets a lot of heat. So when it's facing north, you need to plant species that they like a lot of heat. They are not like species that grow in the cold environment, like apples and peaches. So the apples and peaches, they will go in the southern side of the slope. Remember, we are in the southern hemisphere. So the sun, most of our sun is into the northern side of our landscape. So it is important that within the landscape, plant species that like heat in the northern side. Even at your house, if your house is facing north, the facing north side of the house, you plant pawpaws because the pawpaw they need like heat, and it will not be fair to plant apples and the peach trees because they will be hit by the reflection of heat from the building or the glasses from the building to the tree. So those need to be considered. Swells, when you are doing this, you have selected your trees and you want to plant them, it is important to design your farm with swells. On a slope, you develop a contour ridge, a ridge that is on a contour line across the slope, and this ridge helps to stop or to reduce the runoff water from the hill or the upper side, and allows the water to go to the trap of the ridge or the swell. The water is stored and forced to infiltrate in the soil. When it goes into soil, it's supporting the boreholes, supporting the underground water tables, and then we have clean water in the rivers. And with the trees that you have, you plant them on the ridge of the contour line or the contour ridge. They bind the soil and make the water that is trapped there to go into the ground. So it is important that you can also consider different techniques like water collection pits, like dams, like divergent drains. All these, they work when you design your farm properly. And as long you are not allowing the water to run away from the system, from the farm. And as long also what you are designing, it generates income and food for the family. So the food forest is capable of producing food and capable of producing medicine, capable of producing money, and capable of cleaning the atmosphere, cleaning the pollution. So also, as I mentioned, some of them, they can be windbreak and also sunlight trappers, and also repair or protect young plants from the frost and from the sun. This is an example of a food forest. That's my farm in Zimbabwe, evergreen food forest. And as you see, there are several plants there. There is mangoes to the southern side of the farm, and you have the Ukapa kakiana, the mobola, not the mobola plum, is the Ukapa kakiana. It's the, what's the English name? Forget, but the botanical name is Ukapa kakiana, which is indigenous fruit in Zimbabwe. Is this one, and we have the others here, the wild plum that are still young. They are a bit in front of the mango trees, and within the mango there are guava trees there, and we have variety of species. As you come lower to the house and to the buildings, we have pigeon pea and pomegranates and guavas, and also some guavas. And this is a system that helps nature work and produce what you want, and you live happily, and the environment also enjoy the system. But also benefits of guilds, okay, of guilds or microclimates that you can create. It helps in the assembly of different species to a central to form a central element, which means once you create this forest, different species that are together, they now talk to each other. Say, what do you need? Someone will need, I need the nitrogen. Then the other one provides. What do you need? I need shade. What do you need? So they support each other in the system. And that's why this system can provide wide variety of food, not only fruits, but it can also provide nuts. It can also provide roots, tubers, because within that you can plant creeping plants that form tuber in the ground. It can provide edible insects. It can provide wide variety of food. Disease, this system self-regulates itself for diseases, because the birds will be there. The ground scratchers, they will go in and pick cutworms. Different kind of birds will come in and eat small insects there. And other insects also, they will eat each other in the system. So you are creating a system, an ecosystem that is live, an ecosystem that is self-independent, and that can create yourself to be sovereign. You cannot be sovereign if you are still depending from the outside sources, outside food. You cannot be food sovereignty. So basically, this is a self-managing system that provides its own energy, provide energy for the family, and create good living on earth. As I say, my background, I inherited the knowledge from my parents. See that huge mango tree, it's at my place in Zimbabwe, and it's a farm that is self-sustaining, basically. But what we are trying to say here, you continue providing other species to create a system, what you call a succession system, and different species will be there to support each other and provide food for the family. This system can also help restoring biodiversity. Now the bees will have access to flowers and make honey. And once the honey is there, it's a medicine. And you are no longer get the processed sugar. You are getting right sugar from nature. And other trees provide uh, a lot of food for other animals, and also seeds are generated there. So the system self-supports itself, restores itself. This is where the regenerative approach comes into play. But it only happens when we have a proper design system. If we use a proper permaculture design approach, then consider the agroecological systems or practices, then you create a regenerative system on your environment. So design of this nature, you can do it in a way that you like. You see this farm, on the boundary, you find several trees are planted. You see the tall one is purple because it's competing for sunlight. But the other trees that are closer by there, that is planted with purple, it's mango and guava and oranges. But the purple doesn't live longer, maybe 5 to 10 years, it's dying back. Then it becomes manure for the other plants. And whilst it's dying back, it's giving chance for other trees to grow, because the others, they grow slow, but they will grow huge after some years. So this design is a food forest on the boundary of an annual field that people, they grow annual crops in between. And the boundary is filled with edible plants, mixed indigenous and exotic species, as long they are not invasive, as long they are not too competitive and killing other species. So this system, it is good when you start a drip irrigation system, or to start on spot watering system, where you put the water right to the tree, and that helps the plants to grow fast. Or you take water from the house and channel, like what we have done here, to channel water from the house, the grey water system, use it to grow this food forest, and they can grow even faster than what you anticipate. So basically, at the end of the day, you need to maintain the forest. And once you maintain the forest, it will provide you with food all the time. It is advisable that all the time plant new species in the system. Where you see a gap, plant another plant. Where you see a gap, plant a species, plant a tree, plant a fast-growing plant, so that you benefit whilst the other trees that grow slow are there and are still growing. When you have branches, it is important to prune branches rather than cut out the tree. Prune a branch or prune a tree so that it gives you the shape you like. The system will actually help all the time to provide what you need. And when you are feeding the plants, feed them right onto the ground and give them food. And then when you want to spray the flowers. Do not spray the whole tree. Spray on the flowers to make sure that you control some certain pests that may attack the fruit. And mulching is very important all the time. Add mulch or let the plants provide its own mulch by chop and drop, cutting branches from the tree and apply it on the ground and make sure that the ground is covered. Like here, my garden, always the ground is covered. So it is important that you do cover the ground all the time. We don't want to see soil. We want to see organic matter on the top, on the ground. And always add scented or smelly plants like indigenous species, considering cancer bush, the wild rosemary, the scented plant, the fennel, fever plant, garden rue. All these are indigenous species that you can include in there as smelly plants, but they also provide you with some benefits, some medicinal properties. You can drink, you can use them as tea. And make sure that it is important that you replace those species that are not productive enough so that they become firewood for the family rather than you go and cut firewood somewhere. You prune them, you get firewood, you get energy from the system. And consider that indigenous species, they are always there. Do not focus only on exotic species. And always practice rattan, which is the cutting back of trees and it shoots and provide new shoots, cut back, provide new shoots. Those cuttings can be used to cover the ground and can be used to feed the animals like fodder, or can be used to make compost, can be used. So the food forest itself, it can provide an answer to food insecurity in Africa. It can give an answer to hunger and poverty. It can give an answer to water crisis. Because once we can green and create these lungs, the green lungs in our homestead, the answer is all a little rain we receive, it goes in the ground. And you help the effective water cycle in your environment because of the evapotranspiration that happens within the species that we have. It is our responsibility to ignore and run away from deserts by creating food forests. Thank you.
I'm going to leave it in this format just so that it doesn't stick, because that often happens. And then, yeah, so just to get started. So as you know, and as Jane has mentioned, COPAC and SAFC develop these activist guides, all of which can be found on the SAFC website. So today we are going to focus on the Land Justice Activist Guide. So there are 8 modules, and this is just the table of contents, but I'm going to actually go through each of the modules very briefly, so I'm going to skip this. So the first module is the introduction and outlining our complex relationship with land, how land is used, such as mining and commercial agriculture, and how this has impacted the climate, etc. The second module is then just how to use this activist guide to run a workshop, and the details, the practical details, can be found in the guide online. The third module is then about how land is currently being used both in South Africa and internationally. So again, we know that in South Africa, it's mainly mining and these big white commercial industrial farms. Module 4 is then about the South African history of land dispossession and degradation. And this module talks about the history of colonialism and apartheid, which of course we know stripped people of their relationships to the land and very much complicated our relationship that many communities had to the land. Given that history, module 5 then speaks about the environmental politics, governance, and challenges. So it essentially outlines the policies in place for land reform in the democratic country, obviously, namely land redistribution, restitution, and then security of tenure. It also goes into some of the environmental policies and laws. So that's that module. And then it also provides an opportunity in this exercise, for example, to discuss the roles and systems with regard to land ownership. So can women access land? What are the role of chiefs, if there is a role? Basically, how do people own the land in your community? Module 6 then speaks about systemic alternatives. And if you have been with us in other webinars and other spaces, you will know that we have a climate justice charter, and you would know that there are many more alternatives that we speak about in there. But relevant to land justice are these alternatives. Of course, the deep just transition, moving us to a post-carbon society that can survive the climate crisis. There's also agroecology, which are the methods spoken about in this workshop series, and most of the methods that John speaks about contribute to agroecology. And then there's land commons, which is also one of the alternatives. So moving away from, the Western ideas of owning land in private property, and moving more towards a common ownership or common use of land. Another alternative is then eco-social housing, the solidarity economy, and then, of course, food sovereignty. It also outlines some struggles for land all around the world. So, for example, very famous ones would be the Bolivian indigenous peoples movement and the Brazil landless workers movement. Those were kind of big ones in history. And then closer to home, of course, the Tolobeni struggle against open cast mining is one in our history that's, of course, a struggle for land. The next section is the one that I will focus a bit more time on, because I know I flew through those first few modules. So module 7 is about a deep just transition pathway to climate justice, advancing land justice and food sovereignty. So there are a number of principles which people in the space believe in, and that should be kept in mind when developing these plans for a deep just transition or for food sovereignty. So these are to value, work with, and defend nature. The second one is participatory democracy, collective ownership, and self-regulation. The second one is third one is environmental justice, community benefit, non-discrimination. The second last one is climate justice, and then principle 7 is then solidarity. Everyone's struggle is a common struggle, a shared struggle to sustain life. And then we go into a bit more detail about how do we actually do this? How do we actually make these plans to move our communities forward and have a deep just transition in our communities? Firstly, we have to know where we are going. What do we want? What are we actually fighting for? Often we don't envision the things that we are fighting for, which makes the struggle much more difficult. So this first exercise in module 7 is about creating and envisioning your ideal community. So what does it look like? What is allowed? How is the land used? What is not allowed? For example, no mining or no commercial agriculture. Essentially, what does your ideal community look like? But all the while keeping in mind those principles that I spoke about. So non-discrimination, solidarity, all of those things. And then once you have done this, once you have a vision of what you want, there are practical things you can do in order to start moving your community forward and not just having these discussions and kind of wishing for something. So the first thing the guide urges you to do is embark on what we call a community mapping exercise. And there's steps outlined in the guide on how to do this. So firstly, you have to demarcate what your community is. So this is your self-definition of what your community is. It might be a geographical area on a map, it might just be a couple of streets, or maybe it's a couple of families, but essentially what constitutes your community. Once you know what your community is, you take a walk and you draw some kind of map where you can mark off the physical features, such as, and this is natural and man-made, so whether it's schools or rivers, community buildings, maybe mosques or churches, whatever it may be. So this is you identifying parts of your community that can help you achieve your ideal community that you envisioned in the previous exercise. Then once you have this map, you start looking more closely. What are the needs in your community? What are your specific needs that your community faces? And then what are the opportunities available in your community to meet those needs? So maybe, for example, there's open land. Maybe there's a community center or church, but essentially mark out on your map spaces of opportunity. Then what you can do is share with others and start connecting the dots. So if multiple groups did this, you then come together, you look at various maps, because obviously this is such a subjective thing that different people will find different opportunities. And you start to connect the dots between the needs that some people found and the opportunities that some people found. So maybe in your community, there's a need for food. And then maybe another group found that there is an open space where you can start, for example, a garden. So start figuring out solutions for some of the needs in your community. And obviously the solutions won't always be like this. You know, there are needs that need much bigger systemic solutions. So then once you have done this, you can develop what we call a community land justice plan, which again, the guide teaches you how to do. It outlines a template for what that is. And then you do the previous exercise if you haven't done it, of envisioning what the community is going to look like. And then you develop a plan of action. So for example, maybe it's, if you are going with a garden, maybe it's about cleaning up the land. Maybe it's about starting to get donations. It's about getting volunteers. Basically start thinking about all the small wins and the small tasks you can do in order to help reach your bigger vision. It's also possibly about hosting a workshop. So there are all these small things, including information sharing, that you can start doing. And later, I will show you that there's contacts that you can, there's organizations that you can make contact with who can hopefully help you with some of these things. So then let's say that was just a small group of you that embarked on this journey to create a land justice plan. What you then need to start doing is integrating or scaling up your effort, and start looking at how that plan that you have made can fit into or make up a larger campaign. So maybe even start mobilizing around other issues. So for example, land justice is a central foundational part of climate justice. So maybe from your land justice activism, you start also mobilizing for climate justice. So again, there's just 6 short suggestions for how to do that. So first, you can start inviting more people into your space. Maybe it was a very small group of you who started this campaign. You start inviting community leaders, maybe people who didn't join initially. Basically start creating more interest in your project. The second one is to now have a meeting, have a workshop to explain the issues. And maybe here you want to use some of the other activist guide that we've developed, such as food sovereignty or water sovereignty. And sorry, and then identify the specific problem that you have that you want to tackle, and identify the alternative that goes with that you would want to promote. So again, the example of hunger. If hunger is the issue, you can then promote food sovereignty as the alternative. The fourth step is then to start engaging with policies and laws. Some of them are available in this guide, because they do exist out there, and we can often use the law to move our campaigns forward. And you can even contact some of the local organizations for help with this. Often the environmental organizations are able to help look through policies with you. The fifth one is then to attend government meetings. So if there are community consultations that are coming into the space or town halls, join those meetings and bring up your issues. And lastly, as mentioned, create a plan of action as part of your land justice plan. And then you can start operationalizing some of these things. And then the last module is obviously just the conclusion, restoring our relationship with land. And then the last part of the guide is just a couple of pages with contact details of various organizations working on land and working on climate justice issues that would possibly be willing to help you look through policies or start your garden or whatever you identify is your issue that you want to address. Just to note that I did fly through these first modules, but really the bulk of the guide is all of this information to be used in whatever way you want. The last section that I covered is essentially just suggestions on how, if you want to take up a campaign, how to do that. But all of this information and history and research that has been put into this guide can be used in various ways. And yeah, that's at your disposal. I'm going to post the link now to the land guide. It's freely available online.
Great, thank you, Courtney. So I'm not sure if there've been any questions. John, have you been keeping an eye? John is with us to answer any questions that you might have. Let's see, I'm just looking at the chat now. So, okay, we have something from Yanni Pretorius, who's saying, how can the people in the township check their soil, that it's fertile before planting? And also, what are the trees that are suitable for a small garden in the Western Cape?
Hello?
Hi, John, go for it. Did you get those questions? Okay.
Yes. The last one, I didn't get it, but about the soil. How can they check if the soil is rich? That's correct? In the urban areas? Yeah. In the urban areas, there is so much waste that comes from the kitchen, that comes from the cuttings, the grass mowing. And if you check where you throw the grass and where you throw this waste, you see the soil become blackish. And that is different from either where people are sweeping, where the soil is sand-like. So the dark soil that you find in the where we throw things, where there is dumping, it indicates the soil is rich. That black, the color change, its soil is rich. If you want to do the testing of pH, it's another way. You can do the testing of pH. You can also do the texture testing of the soil. We covered it in the first webinars. So there are so many ways that you can do to check on that. Even the growth of a plant, like this is rain season, you find several plants are voluntarily growing. And you can see when they are growing health, it means your soil is rich. But if they are growing poor, they are having yellow color, purple color, then they are not, the soil is not good.
Great, thank you, John. And then the second question was, sorry, this one was from Yanni Pretorius. What trees are suitable for a small garden in the Western Cape? And then linked to that is there a resource that one can use to find out what fruit trees grow where in South Africa?
Yes, thank you. In Western Cape, Department of Agriculture is a database for a number of techniques of agricultural techniques, and also some plants. And also Sunbee is also a database for trees and plants that can grow, indigenous plants that can grow in Western Cape. In Western Cape, I've done some projects there where I promoted the planting of olive trees. They grow well there. The pomegranates, they can grow well in the area. And also apples and the vines, the grapes, they grow well. And those are some of the species that I know that they can grow well in that area. Avocado can grow, but you need a bit of protection because of wind, too much wind. So that's what I can recommend.
Thank you. And then we'll take one more question from Cliff again. After the rain season, what vegetables should one grow? They are assisting a food garden in Alex.
Where are they, in Alexandra?
Yes.
After this is the season for many wide variety of plants that you can grow, from all the cereals, the grain, small grains, all the most grains they grow this time of the season, and the vegetables and like spinach, cover, bit of cabbage. Cabbage is a bit late now, but also beans. This is the time for beans. The one who is in Alex, I will invite you to visit my project here in Midrand. We are not too far apart, so you can visit us and see what we are growing. I have thousands of plants that are enjoying in my garden now.
Thanks for that invitation. So Clifford, if you get in touch with me, I can pass on John's details, or you can also just Google it. What is it, John? Ukuvuna, or John and Nzira.
That's John Nzira.
And you will find his details there. Okay, that is all we have time for now. So just again, a big thank you to Courtney and also John for sharing with us. And I hope that everyone who's attended now has enough knowledge to at least start designing your food forest or thinking about it or working with your community to work on that. Just to mention, our next workshop will take place next week, Wednesday. We're going to look at water management, and you can register now. Courtney will share the link in the chat. And the recording this webinar has been recorded. It's also on Facebook, and we will share that with everyone who's registered shortly. We'll share this link again in an email. So thanks again to everyone for joining us. Thanks to John and Courtney. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.